we don't try to bother her that often. Jessi Pierce of NHL.com on the Bar Down Beauties podcast joins us. Hey, Jessi, you should be smiling. Is Minnesota the best state for sports right now in America with what's going on with the Vikings and Wild? You tell me.
I mean, it feels that way. I think us Minnesotans are all collectively holding our breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop because this doesn't happen. Usually it ends in devastation for us, maybe a missed field goal, maybe a number of things that could go awry. But right now it feels pretty darn good to have the Vikings and the Wild performing as well as they are.
Good for you. I was going to say good for you, man, but I'll say good for you, lady. And because we are primarily hockey, as are you, I think, if somebody had told you in the second week of December that the Wild would be in a tie for the number one overall team in the NHL, like, close to Christmas, we're past the third way point, I think. What would you have said?
I would have thought they were crazy. I would have asked to get whatever that they were on that made them so delusional. I mean, you look at this Minnesota Wild team, they're returning a lot of the same roster that did very, very poorly last year. Not much has changed except you're getting rebounds from guys like Philip Gustafson, who is really manning the net right now. Kirill Kaprizov didn't start out as slow as he did last year. And you have some injuries, but you're really navigating. There's just an entirely different feel around this because, yes, they're missing some key players in Matt Zuccarello, Joel Eriksson and Jonas Brodin. But it feels different. It feels like they can weather that storm, whereas last year those injuries really took a toll on them. So it's wild, pun intended, to see how crazily well that they are performing. But it's exciting, and it's exciting for the future of the Minnesota Wild, too.
Yeah, but I mean, I know how close you were or what you thought of the last coach, Dean Evason. But what's different from a year ago is a new head coach. How much does that have to do with it in your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, I love Dino. Dino's a character, and John Hines came in and was a very different coach. He's so focused on the structure, which I think has really shown in the way that the Minnesota Wild have performed. He's very into every little detail. Not to say that Dean Evason wasn't, but it's just a very different style of coaching. And this year, John Hines was able to come in at training camp. And there's a difference when you're able to do that, right? Be with these guys from the get-go, from the jump at camp. And there was such a heavy emphasis on those details of the game. He really wanted players to continue to focus on those little things while still playing their game. And also, I love John Hines in the way that he's not afraid to shake things up, to move things around. Dean Evason very often got married to his lines, and he didn't really change. He never really countered things. Whereas John Hines certainly is willing to move things around if things aren't going well within the game. Not to mention he's not afraid to double shift their best player, which is Kirill Kaprizov, and that certainly pays dividends in the end.
Is Kirill Kaprizov the best player you've ever seen play for the Wild? You've been covering this team you're the only reporter I know covering the team for NHL.com long enough. That's not saying you're old, but is he the best Wild player you've seen?
Yeah, hands down. I mean, Marian Gaborik is the closest that you could come to having a bona fide superstar, but he's better than Gaborik. And I was saying that a couple years ago. The way that Kirill approaches the game and the way that he continues to be a student while not just relying on his incredible skill, which includes passing, which includes scoring, which includes just battling along the boards. I mean, he is a superstar that is so fun to watch because he works so gosh darn hard at it too. Even on the things that come easy. He's the first on the ice. He's the last on the ice. So yeah, Kirill definitely the best in Wild franchise history, which shows in the record books too. He continues to shatter a lot of the records set by Gaborik, but while shattering his own too, he continues to outdo himself. So he's somebody that Bill Guerin certainly is hoping will be in for the long run with Minnesota.
Viewer John in Winnipeg says, I think the Wild can win the Stanley Cup. And this is coming from a Winnipeg Jets super fan. And believe me, he is. I know in Winnipeg they refer to the Wild as their top rival, or at least I believe they do. Is it reciprocated by the Wild, or do you have another bigger rivalry than Winnipeg?
It's between them and Dallas. I mean, Chicago used to be kind of the big rival because they always seem to get the best, but obviously with Chicago going through their rebuild of their own, that competition has lessened slightly. I love when Winnipeg comes to town. I love the passion of their fans. I really enjoy Jets fans. It's fun to see them doing well. So I would say Winnipeg's definitely up there. But the Dallas Stars, there's obviously a little bit of hatred there just with the whole relocation of the North Stars, all of that good stuff. Playoff series as well. Dallas was their latest rival, but Winnipeg, is definitely up there. So it's kind of fun that they're having such a great year as well, because it's a good thing when you've got two top dogs going head to head in a rivalry series.
And that, a playoff series would just be monumental between the two. But I'm glad we talked about the rivalries, because I didn't know who would have been number one for Minnesota. Dallas certainly makes sense, and then Chicago geographically. Listen, we talk about Bar Down Beauties. I've listened to it. It's great. NHL.com and your coverage there. But your Vikings coverage, you do some of that too, right?
I do, yeah. Every Monday we have a Before I Die, which is leaning on Before I Die. We'd love to see a Lombardi trophy here in Minnesota. They've been a team to watch. Sam Darnold, man. Who would? I know you're a Vikings fan, Rod. Are you shocked as they're doing so well?
As I wear my Cowboys, I will say I like the Vikings. I don't love the Vikings. I respect them, and I have so many friends that are just diehard like yourself. That's why where I wanted to wind this around. Like when Sam Darnold was brought in, he was just supposed to be a placeholder, a spot holder, right, for J.J. McCarthy. And listen, your fans are no different than any other fans. Have you heard people go, what do we do next year when J.J.'s healthy? Or are they just enjoying the ride and not going there yet?
It's a little bit of both, right? NFL fans can be a little unhinged sometimes, sports fans in general. Sam Darnold was supposed to be a gap stop, right? He was just supposed to be that layover. And it'll be curious to see what happens if he does indeed take the Minnesota Vikings to the Super Bowl, because then you have to consider re-signing him. Right now, I think he'll probably end up testing free agency. And there were a couple weeks in there where Sam Darnold played like Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he definitely was throwing some interceptions, but to see the chemistry that he's built with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson has been absolutely tremendous. It's been so fun to watch. And a big credit to Kevin O'Connell, who we have dubbed the quarterback whisperer, who seems to get the most out of quarterbacks, to their surprise. Josh Dobbs, for instance, last year. It's incredible. But JJ, I think, is the future. I know a lot of fans here are very excited. But we're enjoying the ride. I thought the Vikings were going to win maybe 8 games this year, and they're certainly outdoing us. This is what Minnesota does, though. They surprise you with their sneaky good years with quarterbacks that probably shouldn't be as great as they are. But hey, it's a fun time to watch.
Let's be honest. What's the bigger surprise, the Wild or the Vikings?
That's a great question. I think I would say the Vikings. I mean, I'm also very surprised with how well the Wild are doing and how consistently well that they're doing. But I really did not see the Vikings having 11 wins on the season, right? Like, I just did not see that happening, and they're still 4 weeks away. It's that one to me is the bigger surprise. Minnesota, sure, they could have maybe figured it out, but I would say they're second. Yeah, Vikings, that's my biggest surprise.
All right, let's not forget. 3 teams from that division in the playoffs, it appears. So it's 12 wins in the toughest division in the league. So for as long as it goes, I wish you well, Jessi. Thanks for this. We won't bother you till it's over, but enjoy the ride, and we love your coverage. Keep it up.
Appreciate it, Rod. We'll talk to you.
Jessi Pierce joining us from Minnesota. The state of hockey, they say.